Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on which part of the world you are. I am here in Sydney, Australia, and it's a really beautiful day today. So welcome to the channel, and I hope you guys are doing great. Now today we'll be talking about a historical episode when unspeakable cruelty was perpetrated against religious minorities. The reason for making this video is obviously to raise awareness because a lot of people don't know about these things. And in very limited circumstances, when this history is brought up, many of its crucial details are omitted. So my intention is to make people aware of those things so that they can make informed decisions. So it was the year 1971 and a new nation is about to be born. It's called Bangladesh. This would be our primary focus of today's discussion. Now, before I get into the atrocities, let me give you a little bit of a background. In the year 1970, one of the deadliest cyclones swept across the coastal regions of Bangladesh in the district of Vola. Nearly 500,000 people were killed and many more were displaced during this crucial time. And the handling of the situation by the central government of Pakistan, or West Pakistan back then, towards the people of Bangladesh or East Pakistan back then was extremely poor. The handling of the relief material by Pakistan towards Bangladesh, towards the devastated people of Bangladesh during this time was extremely poor. And that created a bit of a rift among the people of Bangladesh. Now, a month later, in the month of December, election took place when the main opposition party of Army League, won the election. In fact, they won a landslide victory. However, the ruling party of Pakistan, the military dictator, rejected this result. Dictator Yahya Khan rejected this result. Now, because of these two incidents, in November, the mishandling of the relief material towards the devastated people of Bangladesh, plus in the month of December, rejection of the people's will, rejection of the election result by the military dictator of Pakistan, both of these incidents caused a massive unrest among the people of Bangladesh. They became extremely unhappy with the decisions made by the central government of Pakistan. Now, we are told that the Pakistani government, the military dictator, wanted to quash this rebellion because people became very unhappy with both of these incidents. The Pakistani government wanted to quash this rebellion. This is what we are told. Just a couple of months later, there was another incident that took place in Bangladesh. A riot broke out between two communities, the Biharis and of course the Bengalis, the locals of Bangladesh. Now, the people of Bangladesh are extremely unhappy because of the decisions taken by the central government just a couple of months ago. Rejection of the election results, as well as mishandling of the relief material during the crucial time of the cyclone devastation. And now they found out that this Bihari community actually supported Pakistan during their election. So when they found out that despite living in Bangladesh, this Bihari community supported Pakistan, the Bengalis became extremely angry against this Bihari community. And there was this riot that broke out. Although people died on both sides, but most of the casualties were from the Bihari community because they were smaller in number. About 300 people were massacred. Now, we are told that this was the pretext, this was the catalyst for the Pakistani military to intervene into Bangladesh, to conduct atrocities, to conduct genocide. But this is only half truth. In fact, it was a well thought out, very well planned execution for the annihilation of the Hindu community of Bangladesh, which is not discussed very widely for obvious reasons. It is culturally sensitive, but this is the actual case. Now, why am I saying this? Because out of this 9 month, the struggle, the War of Liberation, which started through Operation Searchlight on 25th of March up until 16th of December 1971. During this 9 month, out of those 3 million people that were massacred, and a staggering 80% of these victims were Hindus. A staggering 80% of the victims were Hindus. So how come that these people were in such a huge number if they are not deliberately targeted? In fact, they were deliberately targeted. Now, before military intervention took place, Bangladesh was demilitarized. This whole region was demilitarized. Like the military wing, like the soldiers, the army, they were on forced leave. They were sent on forced leave and they were shuffled across the country. And in fact, the Pakistani military is so riled up with religious hatred that they started conducting this genocide an hour and a half earlier than the proposed time. This genocide on 15th of March, Operation Searchlight, was supposed to start 10 past 1, right after midnight, 10 past 1. However, this military, so riled up by hatred towards the minorities, towards the Hindus especially, they conducted this genocide at 11:30. On 25th of March at 11:30, right before midnight, half an hour before midnight, they conducted this genocide. And when they were conducting this genocide, how did they find out the Hindus? Who helped them? Well, it was the local Muslims. It was the local Muslims who helped them hunt down the Hindus from door to door. The Pakistani army went village to village hunting down the Hindus. And this was the local Muslims who took this military army door to door hunting down the Hindus. Because, like if you live in a village, you probably know everyone. It's a small village, it's a small community, it's a tight-knit community. So everybody knows everyone else. And that is how Hindus were targeted. That is how the Muslim community knew who were the Hindus in that village, and they took the Pakistani military into the houses, particularly of the Hindus. And that's how Hindus were targeted. Again, we're going to see some of the examples in a bit. So this is how Hindus were targeted. Again, these are your neighbors. These are the people who live next door. They probably know each other since they are born. Probably they are their friends. But these friends turn into enemy overnight. And there was this another thing. Right before a person was chosen to be massacred, they undergone a test. Short arm inspection. Now, what is this short arm inspection? Is to check whether that individual is circumcised. And circumcision is one of the sunnah, one of the religious practices of the Muslims. In other words, if you were circumcised, that means you were a Muslim, and if not, then you were non-Muslim. So when these people were chosen to be massacred, they were checked if they were circumcised. In other words, they were checked if they are Muslims. If not, then of course they were taken to the firing squad. So this is how Hindus were targeted by the help of the local Muslims during this massacre. And again, we will see some of the examples, but let's listen to one of the testimonies, one of the very crucial testimonies right after one of these massacres.
There have been many reports of massacres in East Pakistan, and ABC's Howard Tuckner found considerable evidence of one at a village near Dhaka. Here's his report.
We came on this boat to go to another place, but after we got here, we heard stories about incredible atrocities from the people, about a place nearby, upstream. The story sounded incredible. Then I remembered talking to a government official the other day, I asked him how many guerrillas, how many Mukti Bahini were in the Dhaka area. He said 3,000. Then he smiled and said they wouldn't be there for very long. And then we got to that village, and we saw it. The government official had kept his word. The Bengalis here say the government troops came in almost at sunset the night before. They said the people were Mukti Bahini, guerrillas, or that they were sympathizers. The burning and killing must have been something terrible. The people say the soldiers went wild, that they chose people at random, women, men, babies, shot and ran them through with bayonets, and began burning everything in sight. 75 people died this way, massacred. This child, the bayonet was run through her. Entire families were wiped out. All the women, the people say, were raped before they were killed, and their husbands and children, before they were killed, were made to watch their mother's degradation. This man was tortured before he was killed. Then his young son was killed. People were burned alive. In the rampage, animals too were shot in the head. To those who survived those 2 hours, for those who will always remember the screams of women, the moans of their unarmed men, the wails of babies, if they were not Mukti Bahini guerrillas before, they almost certainly will be now. Howard Tuckner, ABC News, at a village outside Dhaka, East Pakistan.
As you just heard, the atrocities committed against the Hindus is just shocking, is just unimaginable. Hindus were hunted from village to village, from door to door. Summary execution, men, women and children, burned alive, gunned down, beheaded, bodies were tortured, mutilated, babies bayoneted, people were bludgeoned to death. In some cases, even the animals couldn't escape these savages. These barbarians, after shooting the animals into the head, like especially the cows, they doused them in petrol or kerosene and set them on fire, burned alive. Of course, people were burned alive, even the animals, the cows. These poor cows were burned alive. Talking about the rape victims, of course, many of them, as they were gang raped, they died. But even then, if they haven't died, let's imagine that these poor women hasn't died yet. In some cases, they were torn apart by the legs, as if their body would be ripped apart into 2. The most indecent, the most inhuman, barbaric torture that you can imagine was conducted against the Hindus by these savages. And these Pakistani soldiers, when conducting this barbarism, it was collaborated by the local Muslims. Now, talking about decency, 93,000 soldiers that were held captive by the Indian army after the war was over was returned to Pakistan. They were held under strict guidance by the Geneva Convention for the prisoners of war. However, 54 Indian soldiers that were held captive by the Pakistani army, nobody knows what happened. Now, of course, you can imagine what happened. I can certainly imagine if they were not, the least of the sufferings they faced obviously is gone down. Or they could be bludgeoned to death, or they could be burned alive. But nobody knows what happened. This kind of sadistic behavior, this kind of brutal, barbaric savagery is just one out of thousands of these examples. Now we're going to get into some of these examples in a bit, but this is like a typical case. Everywhere these savages fell upon the complete unarmed civilians. This is what they did almost in every cases. Again, these people are completely unarmed. They have no weapons, they didn't conduct any terrorism. However, when these barbarians fell upon these innocent victims, these unarmed innocent victims, this is what they did time and time again. Now, let's talk about some of these summary executions. According to some estimate, it is said that on an average, daily, 6 to 12,000 people are massacred during this period of 9 months, starting from 25th of March, the Operation Searchlight, up until 16th of December. During this period of 9 months, about 6 to 12,000 people are massacred daily. One of these massacres took place in the area called Chuknagar. This is situated in one of the bordering towns in Bangladesh, Khulna. Khulna is a bordering town. I'm talking about the border between Bangladesh and India. This small village witnessed one of the most severe massacres during this 9-month period. So on 15th of May, large number of these refugees started to gather in this area. Okay, when Operation Searchlight was conducted, people started to flee out of fear into India, and on 15th of May, many refugees gathered in this area. And on 20th of May, at around 10 a.m., 3 platoon of these Pakistani soldiers came into this place, and they stopped these fleeing refugees. Again, these are completely unarmed civilians. These civilians are fleeing to neighboring India. They stopped them and opened fire at around 10 a.m. So they stopped these refugees in the place called Jautala, and then they went on to Chuknagar Bazaar. Bazaar means an open area which is usually used for buying and selling. Now, because it's an open area, people gathered around this place, and the Pakistani military opened fire onto these completely unarmed civilians. From 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. that afternoon, about 10 to 12,000 people are massacred. Completely unarmed civilians, men, women, and children. One example. We got more. Burunga, again another neighboring district, Sylhet, like another bordering district, Sylhet. On the afternoon of 25th of May, tensions mounted in Burunga and the nearby villages over the arrival of Pakistani soldiers. At 4 p.m., they met with the local chairman, Inzat Ali. Again, these are local Muslims. After this meeting between the chairman and the Pakistani military. After this meeting, it was announced by beating the drums in the village that on the next morning, the morning of 26th of May, a peace committee would be formed and peace cards will be distributed in the grounds of the high school, in the grounds of Burunga High School. In spite of the fear, the residents of Burunga and nearby villages began to assemble at the Burunga High School grounds from 8 a.m. the next day. More than 1,000 people gathered at the school premises. At around 9 a.m., collaborator Abdullah Chaudhry, dear Abdul Khalik, again these are local Muslims, arrived in a jeep at the school ground along with Pakistani army contingent led by Captain Nuruddin. That tallied the attendance against the list they had with them and felt satisfied. Meanwhile, another group went from door to door in the village and commanded the males to assemble at the school ground. At around 10 a.m., they segregated the crowd into two groups, Hindus and Muslims. The Hindus were herded into the office room and the Muslims were taken into a classroom inside the school building. The latter, the Muslims, were made to recite the kalma. Now, kalma means kind of like taking an allegiance to Islam. Kalma, like there are 5 or 6 kalmas, which means once you recite the kalma, you swear allegiance to Islam. So these Muslims were made to recite kalma and also they are made to recite the Pakistani national anthem, and then they were set free. However, the remaining Muslims were asked to tie the Hindus with ropes in batches of 4. Again, these are the Hindus of the same village. These are the Muslims of the same village who were asked to tie the hands of the Muslims in a batch of 4. These are the neighboring Muslims, mind you, neighboring Muslims tying the hands of the Hindus. Some of the Hindus began to cry out of fear. In the meantime, one of the captive Hindus, Srinivas Chakrabarti, had managed to open one of the windows. Pritiranjan Chaudhary, the headmaster of the Burunga High School, who was among the captives, along with Ranu Malakar, a Hindu youth, jumped out of the window. The Pakistani army opened fire on them, but they managed to escape. At about noon, the Hindus were brought outside to the grounds from the school building, and 90 of them were made to stand in 3 columns. They were burst fired from 3 light machine guns under the command of Captain Nuruddin. The Pakistani army then poured kerosene over the dead bodies and set them on fire. Ram Ranjan Bhattacharya, a prominent and influential lawyer at the Sylhet Judge Court, who too was being held by the Pakistani forces, was let go. As soon as he got up from his chair, he was shot from behind. He died instantly. After the massacre, a group of 8 to 10 collaborators, led by Abdul Ahad Chaudhary and Dear Abdul Khalek, looted the village and molested the womenfolk. Dear Abdul Khalek, probably a PhD, probably an educated person. These are the neighboring Muslims, and many of these are educated neighboring Muslims. In cold blood, they massacred their neighboring Hindus. Burunga massacre. We got more. Shakari Baja. Now this is a small town, like a area in the capital city of Dhaka, in the old part of Dhaka. On 26th of March, 1971, again 25th was the Operation Searchlight, and this was the very next day. About 212 Hindus were gunned down. Like these were predominantly a Hindu populated area, Shakari Baja. 212 were gunned down on 26th, the next day. And on 27th, again 25th was the Operation Searchlight, and 2 days later, 27th, the temple of Lord Kaliji, Ramna Kali Temple, became another graveyard. 250 Hindus were massacred. Dr. John E. Rowdy of USAID, who visited this place, Ramna Kali Temple, on 29th, witnessed charred corpses of men, women and children who had been killed by machine guns and then set on fire. The Pakistani army doused the temple with petrol and gunpowder and set it on fire, along with around 50 cows. Those poor little cows couldn't escape these savages. And this is the last one. And this one is very close to my heart because I was born just a couple of kilometers away from this place. It is called Muzaffarabad. It is a small village in the district Chittagong, next to Patia. Patia is where I was born. Muzaffarabad is just a couple of kilometers away. An estimated 300 Bengali Hindus, from 5-year-old child to 80-year-old men and women, were killed in that massacre. 3rd of May, 1971. 5-year-old, 80-year-old. Men, women and children. Indiscriminate killing. Even the animals. Wholesale gang rape of women. Unspeakable cruelty. This is how the Hindu women became the war booty of the Muslim man. When we talk about hostages, nowadays people are talking a lot about the children, a lot about innocent, and of course a lot about hostage. But these people, these mostly the men who are slaughtered, men who are gunned down, they are, made to stand in columns and burst fired. But the women folk, the women, girls, babies, they became the war booty of the Muslim man. And this is how Hindus were treated by the Muslims in 1971 in Bangladesh. I hope you learned something new out of this. And if this kind of material you'd like to see in future as well, please subscribe and spread this news. And thank you for watching, and I will catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.